A home filled with laughter, two little girls who adored their father, and a wife who believed she had found the love of her life. A family that, to the outside world, seemed to have everything: love, success, and a future filled with hope. But what does it take for that illusion to shatter in the most unthinkable way? What pushes a man to destroy the very people he once swore to protect? August 13, 2018. A mother and her children vanished. No warning, no struggle, just gone. A desperate plea for their return echoed across television screens. A father stood before cameras, his voice measured, his face unreadable. The nation watched, waiting for answers. But as the hours passed, the truth began to surface, piece by piece. Lies unraveled, secrets spilled, and a horrifying reality came into focus. Debt, pressure, a marriage strained under financial ruin, a husband seeking a way out. Some say money changes everything, but could it have been the reason for murder? Was financial desperation enough to turn a father into a killer? Tonight, we expose the hidden truths that Chris Watts never wanted the world to see. The bankruptcy, the mounting bills, the weight of it all crushing him from every angle. And the chilling question that remains: if money had never been a problem, would his family still be alive? Frederick, Colorado. A town where neighbors greet each other on morning walks, where families settle down, believing they've found the perfect place to build a future. It was here that Chris and Shanann Watts planted their roots, a couple that, to the world, seemed to be living the American dream. A spacious 5-bedroom home, 2 beautiful daughters, a baby boy on the way. A marriage filled with love and laughter, as seen in countless social media posts. But behind those smiling pictures, a reality that no one saw was tightening its grip. A mortgage that stretched beyond their means. Credit cards pushed to their limits. Loans stacking up with no way out. In 2015, the truth could no longer be ignored. The Wattses filed for bankruptcy, drowning under more than $450,000 in debt. It was a financial crisis that should have been a turning point. But instead, it became a ticking time bomb. Chris worked long hours at Anadarko Petroleum. Shanann, determined to help, found success in multi-level marketing with Thrive. But their earnings could never quite catch up with the lifestyle they had built. Vacations, expensive dinners, a luxury home with a mortgage that exceeded $3,000 a month. It was a fragile balancing act, and the cracks were beginning to show. In private messages, Shanann confided in friends about the pressure she felt. How she was the one keeping their finances afloat, how Chris seemed distant, withdrawn. To her, it was a marriage that just needed effort, communication, and time. But to Chris, it may have felt like something else entirely. By the summer of 2018, Shanann was planning for the arrival of their baby boy, Nichol. She saw a future filled with possibility. But Chris saw something else. A family he could no longer afford, a marriage he no longer wanted, and a way out that no one could have predicted. By 2015, the Watts family was drowning. The numbers told a bleak story: nearly $500,000 in debt, more than they could ever pay off. Chris earned a stable salary at Anadarko Petroleum, but it wasn't enough. Shanann, always the optimist, threw herself into Thrive, a health and wellness MLM company that promised financial freedom. On social media, she radiated confidence, sharing success stories, posting about her earnings, her bonuses, and the financial security she believed she was building. But the reality was far more complicated. While Shanann projected success, their finances were crumbling. A mortgage of over $3,000 a month, maxed out credit cards, medical bills stacking up from past treatments, and new loans just to stay afloat. Every dollar they made was already spent before it hit their bank account. To her followers, Shanann was thriving. To those closest to her, she was fighting to keep their family afloat. She worked tirelessly, traveling for business trips, recruiting new clients, pushing sales. And all the while, she believed Chris was standing beside her, supporting her, loving her. But something had changed. Chris, once the quiet, devoted husband, had become distant, withdrawn, cold. The late-night workouts, the extra hours at work, the phone always turned away when Shanann walked into the room. It was subtle at first, then undeniable. And Shanann, 6 months pregnant, began to suspect the worst. Chris Watts was no longer just a stressed husband buried under financial debt. He was a man consumed by something else. An affair, a double life, a new future that didn't include his wife and children. And in those final weeks, his choices, every text, every deleted message, every secret meeting, were leading toward a moment from which there would be no return. The pressures were mounting. The debts, the marriage, the affair. Chris Watts had backed himself into a corner. And on the night of August 12, 2018, as his pregnant wife flew home from a weekend trip, he had already made up his mind. By sunrise, everything would be different, but not in the way anyone could have imagined. A husband, a father, a man drowning in debt, tangled in a secret affair, desperate for a way out. Did financial ruin push him over the edge? Or had something far more disturbing taken hold? Chris Watts had backed himself into a corner. He had a pregnant wife, 2 daughters, and a life he no longer wanted. A divorce would have been financially crippling, splitting assets, child support, the house they couldn't afford. But murder? That would erase everything in a single night. No debts, no responsibilities, just freedom. On the night of August 12, 2018, as Shanann flew home from her business trip, she had no idea what awaited her. She had spent days away, texting Chris, pleading for him to talk to her, to be honest about what was happening between them. She thought she could fix it, that they could work through whatever was pulling him away. She still believed their marriage had a chance. Chris had already decided otherwise. At exactly 1:48 a.m., Shanann walked through the front door for the last time. Inside that home, there was no argument, no screaming, just a final, devastating silence. What happened inside those walls remains one of the most chilling and heartbreaking crimes in modern history. By dawn, Shanann, Bella, and Celeste would be dead. In the early hours of August 13th, Chris Watts made his move. His wife, 15 weeks pregnant, was in bed. In his own words, he straddled her, pressed his hands around her neck, and squeezed. No struggle, no last words. Just a sudden, horrifying end. When it was over, his daughters, Bella and Celeste, woke up. Their mother was gone, but their father? He was still there. And he told them everything was okay. What came next is unthinkable. Chris wrapped Shanann's body in a sheet and loaded it into his truck. Then, in the dead of morning, he took his daughters along for the ride. He drove for 45 minutes to an oil site owned by his employer. Shanann lay lifeless in the back. His daughters sat beside her, confused, still believing their father was keeping them safe. But when they arrived, the nightmare reached its final, horrifying conclusion. One by one, Chris smothered his own children. Celeste first. Then Bella, who fought back. She had seen everything. And her last words were, "Daddy, no." 2 small bodies were forced into oil tanks. Their mother was buried in a shallow grave nearby. The Watts family erased in just a few hours. And then Chris Watts went back to work. Chris Watts was now a father pleading for his family's safe return. He stood before news cameras, feigning heartbreak, insisting he had no idea where Shanann and the girls could be. But something was off. His story was unraveling. The police found no signs of a break-in, no forced entry, no signs of a struggle inside the home. And then, the ultimate test, the polygraph. Chris Watts failed. Completely, undeniably. He wasn't fooling anyone. And under pressure, with his father in the room, he finally broke. He told a different story, that Shanann had killed their daughters in a fit of rage, and in retaliation, he killed her. But investigators saw through the lies. The evidence was overwhelming. And when the truth finally came out, it was worse than anyone could have imagined. Chris Watts had slaughtered his entire family. All for what? A new life? An affair? Money? Was financial ruin the true breaking point? Had he convinced himself that murder was his only way out? Or was he just a selfish man willing to kill his own family to start over? Chris Watts will spend the rest of his life behind bars. But the real question remains, what really pushed him to commit the ultimate betrayal? On November 19, 2018, in a Weld County courtroom, justice was served. Chris Watts, a man who once portrayed himself as a loving husband and father, was sentenced to 5 life sentences without the possibility of parole. No appeals. No second chances. Just the cold, inescapable truth: he would die in prison. For Shanann's parents, no punishment could undo the devastation. Their daughter, 15 weeks pregnant with their first grandson, was gone. Their granddaughters, Bella, 4, and Celeste, 3, murdered by the man who was supposed to protect them. There were no words for their pain, only an empty space where their family once was. But the story wasn't over. While Chris Watts rotted behind bars, the public turned their attention to Nichol Kessinger, the mistress who had unknowingly played a role in unraveling a family. Nichol told investigators she had no idea that Chris was still married, claiming he told her he was in the process of divorcing Shanann. But as details surfaced, people questioned her story. Could she really have been so blind? Or had she ignored the red flags in her rush for a new romance? Asterisk, the timing was suspicious. Just days before the murders, Nichol searched for information on high-profile mistresses of killers. Was she afraid she would be next? Or had she already suspected Chris was capable of something horrific? The scrutiny became unbearable. Nichol disappeared, reportedly changing her name and cutting ties with her past. Whether she knew more than she admitted remains a controversial question to this day. For months, Chris stuck to his story that Shanann had killed the girls, and he had simply retaliated. But in February 2019, locked away in a maximum security prison, he finally told the full, horrifying truth. He had planned it all. The cold, calculated decision to wipe out his entire family so he could start fresh with his mistress. He admitted that Bella fought back, that she screamed for him to stop, that she had watched him murder Celeste before her own life was taken. Asterisk, it was a confession that chilled the world. This wasn't a man who snapped. This was a premeditated annihilation of the people who loved him most. In the aftermath, experts debated, what really drove Chris Watts to kill? Was it money? Infatuation? A sociopathic lack of empathy? Or was it all of the above? Chris and Shanann's financial troubles were no secret. They were drowning in debt, stuck in a house they couldn't afford, and relying on credit cards just to survive. For some, divorce seemed inevitable, but why didn't Chris just leave? Because divorce would have cost him everything. His house, his money, his reputation. With Shanann gone, he could collect life insurance. With the girls gone, there'd be no child support. And with no family ties, he could run off with Nichol and start over. Asterisk, but Chris Watts never got his fresh start. Instead, he got a lifetime in prison, a cage where he would be forced to live with the weight of his own monstrous actions. Chris Watts may have stolen their lives, but he could never erase their memory. Shanann's parents vowed to keep their daughter's name alive, fighting for domestic violence awareness and reminding the world that monsters don't always come with warning signs. And Bella and Celeste, the innocent little girls who fought for their lives, they became symbols of resilience, of love, and of the dark truth that sometimes the real threat isn't a stranger, it's the person you trust most. Asterisk, this is the story of a family that should have thrived, of dreams that should have been fulfilled, of love that should have lasted a lifetime. But in the end, it became a cautionary tale, a chilling reminder that sometimes the most dangerous lies are the ones we tell ourselves. Asterisk, what do you think was the true motive behind this crime? Was it money, a new life, or something much darker? Let's discuss in the comments below. And if you want to see more deep dive true crime cases like this, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. Because every crime has a final truth. Asterisk, now, we turn the question to you. Was Chris Watts driven to this crime by financial ruin and desperation? Or was this something far more sinister, cold, calculated, and planned? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and let's discuss. What do you think was Chris Watts' true motive? If this case gripped you, make sure to subscribe for more in-depth true crime investigations. We uncover the darkest secrets behind the world's most shocking crimes, because every crime has a final truth. Asterisk.